Hey, my name is Greg McKettrick. I am a compounding pharmacist with Stanley Specialty Pharmacy in Charlotte, North Carolina. I specialize in men's health and sexual wellness. Um, Stanley has been around for a very long time. We specialize in hormone replacement therapies, injectables, eye drops, and a great deal of our compounding has to do with urology. So that's a big part of what I do as my role. Here's my disclosures. I have no relevant financial disclosures. I work for Stanley Specialty Pharmacy and don't have any investors, so you get what you see as far as I'm concerned. We do have a subsidiary, which is called the Stanley Pharma Group. This actually developed because we have instituted a much larger consultative piece to the business, and most of that is handled through the Stanley Pharma Group. So what I am preparing to discuss with you today is a marketing piece on how to build your business and how to identify ways to build your business. So the objectives to the course, quite simply, as you can see, identify the needs that are present in your population. Really focus on the practices in your area that you can best serve and best use to fill those gaps. And then how are you going to do it? So develop the business plan to really capitalize, to really take that need, find the answer, and then develop and grow your business, maximize your return based on those developments. So compounding pharmacy, obviously it's been around for a long time. The issues that we've faced over time have been some of our own doing, some from external. One of the big ones is just the changes with regulations. Some of the changes have been in how we can provide compounds to doctors' offices, or what the FDA considers appropriate to compound. A lot of compounding pharmacies have for a very long time relied on BHRT, or bioidentical hormone replacement compounds, to really build their business. And recently the FDA has taken a position that they don't like that idea, and they are targeting the compounding of hormones. They have changed some of the regulations with veterinary products as well. So a lot of what we do right now is subject to change based on what decisions come down from the FDA. And this has to do with not just hormone replacement, but other compounds as well, ophthalmics, different things to that effect. The other option with this is, we are restricted, even though, like at Stanley, we are able to ship to various states where we hold permits, but we still have a home state. And one of the big guidelines with this, they're changing the percentages of what we can do. So, if you are, again, I'm located in North Carolina. Well, they restrict how much I can ship, even though I'm permitted in South Carolina, permitted in Texas, wherever. They limit how much you can ship out of your home state. And this is a huge factor, because as you're trying to grow your business, obviously your home state, you probably have your foundation, but if you're trying to expand, obviously the new areas are really where you're going to grow the majority of that new business. So that's another big impact. that can affect how you manage your daily operations. For pharmacies that are handling insurance, obviously PBMs are killing us. Reimbursement rates have fallen through the floors, so that is a huge factor. And for us, and I'm sure most of you across the country, this last year has been like nothing we've ever seen. My lobby has been closed since March of last year, and I'm sure that's similar for a lot of you. The pandemic has limited what we can do and how we can treat patients. So a lot of what we do is now remote. We're doing consultations via Zoom and that sort of thing. But these are huge factors that have impacted the growth of our businesses. So what do you do? How do you overcome these challenges? If someone says, I'm going to take away a third of the type of work that you normally do, how are you going to make that up? And this is where we really have to change our mindset in terms of being just a dispensing pharmacy. What does that mean? Well, it means you need to become more clinical. You need to become more of a consultative pharmacy, where you actually are addressing patients' needs on a deeper basis. Don't be the fulfillment center where all you're doing is receiving a prescription and then turning it around and sending it out. That's all great. The problem is you're not going to grow based off of that, not substantially. You need to find other avenues to increase the revenue. And by doing this, then you can recoup some of these losses and some of these impacts that we've seen. So what are you going to do? How are you going to build that? Again, we get back to finding what the need is. Where's the gap? Where can you find a lack of care that you can address? Something that you can really put resources into that you're going to get a return on that investment. And that is, again, the mentality part of this. We need to get past being just the pharmacy that's filling an order as we receive it. And again, there's a lot of those pharmacies that are just the fulfillment centers. So don't be a me too. Don't just be the dispensing side of things. Expand the professional side of your pharmacy. So getting to the point, how do you identify what the gap is? How do you find that unfulfilled need that you are going to fill and really grow your business through? This does not happen if you're just standing back filling prescriptions. You have to get out into your practices. You have to put on your marketing hat and start visiting these offices or doing a Zoom visit, whatever the case might be at this time. So first off, where are you going to learn what the problems are? You're going to learn from your patients. The patients are going to tell you. So in your counseling, you're going to find out where these issues really lie. So become the best counselor you can be. You need patients to relate to you. You need to show empathy. You need to build their trust so that when they do come to you, they are seeking you out for your information. And don't be the counselor who's been a pharmacist for 30 years. When I was in pharmacy school, counseling was, well, you're going to take amoxicillin 3 times a day. That's not what we need here. We need to get into the core of what's happening with the patients. What's their underlying disease states? What are the contributing factors to what's going on with them? What are the problems they're facing? And by doing this, you're going to get much more information. They are going to give you more, and that information is how you are going to identify what the problems really, where they exist. Once you have that information, a lot of what I do it's with men's health, sexual wellness. So a lot of it is with erectile dysfunction or hormone therapy. Once you identify what the problem is, then become an expert. So dig into the literature, really search out, reach out to your partners, your physician partners, your prescribers, and pick their brains, really find out what's going on. Build your knowledge base so that when you come back in with these patients, you now have relevant answers. You have the ability to communicate on a new level with them to really address their problems. As they see benefits, as they start to really gain from your knowledge and from your therapies, then those outcomes are going to come back to you tenfold. They're going back to their doctor to say, hey, this worked out great for me. Now, how do you get in and build up these relationships with these physicians? So if you haven't done a lot of marketing, if you haven't done a lot of physician detailing in the past, this can be something that's a little bit challenging. It can be daunting when you go in and you try to get past that person who's at that counter, whose job is basically there to keep you out. So you need to find ways to get into the office. You need to find ways to really have that opportunity to meet with the doctors. I do a lot of lunches for the offices where I can go in and do in-services, but everyone's a little different. So once you have access to your doctors, then really communicate with them what you do. Let them know how you are caring for their patients. Let them know that you're going to communicate, you're going to give them feedback. You need to establish this relationship with the doctors where you're a trusted partner. And then what you can do is come to them and say, hey, I've been dealing with your patients and I have found this issue. Again, for me, a lot of this stems from patients with sexual dysfunction, patients from, after prostate cancer treatment. And these guys, a lot of times, have no idea where to go for help. So once I identified that that was the case, then I come back to the physicians and I say, hey, I can really benefit you here. I can help these patients. And I will make sure that I keep you apprised of what's going on. I'm going to send you SOAP notes based on your patient's progress so that at no point am I out here acting rogue. I'm letting you know exactly what's going on. But by doing this, we're going to improve the quality of care and the outcomes for your patients. The more detailed my information is to the doctor, the better they feel. The more detailed my information is from the patients, the better I'm able to address the situation and keep the doctor informed. So being very, and again, put your clinical hat on here. We want to start keeping patient notes, therapeutic notes, clinical notes, outcomes, side effects, what are their biggest concerns? What are their goals? So that we can really relate this back to the physician properly. Everybody who does, in a business sense, doctors are there, it's still a business. So what is their value in my handling their patients? What can I offer them? How can I make their business better? So if I'm handling phone calls, if I'm taking a lot of the initial consultation pieces off of their plate, if I get 5 phone calls that normally would go through their office, that's saving them time, that's saving them money, and it's making their office more efficient. So instead of receiving all these calls that come through the office and get channeled to the doctor at some point, we're sending a doctor a direct SOAP note with all of the patient's information. What we're doing is achieving better response, better outcomes for the patients. What's the other benefit of this? Well, if therapies are successful, then that office is going to retain more of their patients. I can't tell you how many times, especially with guys after prostate cancer, they were given one therapy to try, and because it didn't work, they just quit. That means that that patient left the practice, that doctor lost the revenue from that patient, and who knows, in terms of word of mouth, what other fallout came from that. So if we can improve that patient retention, patient outcomes, that's going to benefit the office as well. The other thing, and again, this is going to be unique to what your void is, what you're trying to fill. For me, dealing with a lot of these patients where, after prostate cancer, you have a lot of issues with ED, incontinence, um, climacturia, which is another common problem. I actually have the capacity, because of my relationships with the doctors and with some of the companies that supply different products, where I can refer these patients back to the doctors for surgical interventions. And again, I am a revenue source for them, because not only am I taking care of their patients, but when needed, I'm referring the patient back to the doctor, so that, again, that's another touch for the doctor. They are going to have additional care, additional treatments. And believe me, when they see you as a real partner, they really appreciate that. In terms of, other revenue avenues, as far as the types of businesses that you can develop, one thing that we've been able to do is turn around and help with actual product selections. So we can wholesale devices, supplements, and again, by that, we're able to increase not only our revenue, but we can actually benefit these offices too, because a lot of times they're able to buy things from us a lot cheaper than they can from another vendor. So one thing that I wanted to point out, and again, I realize that this is a marketing webinar, but it's based off of a real practice that I've put in place. So because of the fact that I've worked with men's sexual dysfunction and a lot of patients who are after prostate cancer, I repeatedly had patients coming in, and they would come in for essentially erectile dysfunction. But in the consultations, the so many similar stories came out. They had great sexual function prior to prostate cancer. They went through their treatment. After surgery, their doctors put them on sildenafil, and it didn't work. So I was seeing these guys come to me. Sometimes it was a year or 2 years or 8 years after the fact. No erectile function. So believe me when I talk to you about empathy, when I talk to you about getting into consultations where it goes beyond maybe what your comfort zone has been. When you're sitting across the table from a man who has been through this, and there's literally tears coming down their cheeks because their marriages are falling apart, their self-esteem is shot, their quality of life has deteriorated. And you hear this story over and over. For me, it was a real gut check. And I said, I've got to find a way that I can address this. What you see in front of you is a letter. I do a lot of work with some of the support groups for prostate cancer, and us too is one of the big national groups. I respond to a lot of these patients. They have questions. And again, bottom line is they don't know where to go for answers. So they find the support groups online, and I've got the privilege of being able to get in there and really answer a lot of questions for them. But I came across this gentleman's post. This is a real patient. Joe is he's a restaurant owner from California. And he summarized in his post the motivation that I had for wanting to help these patients. Every step along the way, everything that he addressed in this post, from not getting good follow-up information, not being told by the physician or the surgery center what to expect, not having help to address incontinence and ED and the change in lifestyle and the psychological fallout that came from this. There's a couple of quotes in here that are to me just perfect for what has happened and why I developed what came to be known as the Stanley Penile Rehabilitation Protocol. I love the fact that he says what should happen is a complete roadmap for treatment. And this is for the prostate cancer patient, which includes plans, procedures, a time scale to treat side effects. So again, when I had multiple patients over years coming in with these same stories, I said, I have to be able to do better. And that's when I said, this is my way of addressing this void. I sat down, I actually took what are known treatments. I didn't develop the treatments. What I did was I made a comprehensive path to treat these patients. I made a protocol which addressed step by step the issues that these patients face. Everything from the physical therapy component to the emotional and erectile dysfunction, the incontinence, and put it together in a plan for them. And I'll tell you, this is one of those things where, again, I knew in my head this was a great thing, that I knew it was needed. But at the same time, the first time I walked into a urology clinic with the protocol in hand, you talk about being a little bit apprehensive. I really was. And I was very comfortable going into these offices. I go into these offices all the time, but man, this time I was putting something out there that, boy, this was different. I wasn't just telling them I could do a compound for them. I was telling them, I'm going to take care of your patient. You're going to refer your patient to me. I'm going to take control of this and walk your patient through this so that they have a better outcome. In my head, I had 1,000 conversations about how this could turn out so badly for me, and I'd be embarrassed and all the rest. In reality, what happened was, as soon as I presented it, it was received with so much excitement that I knew I'd hit it. And that has been the resounding effect every single time I've presented this to different physicians. They just love the idea. So again, find your niche, find what the void is. I found mine. I found something that I was passionate about and that I wanted to invest my time and resources in because I felt I could really benefit from, or they could benefit from what I was doing. So how did this really lead up? Over the course of about 4 years of working with patients that were being treated for erectile dysfunction, a lot of consultative work, a lot of training. Now we compound the sterile injections, the trimixes and bimixes. We also compound PDE5s, like sildenafil and tadalafil and vardenafil, into sublingual dosage forms. With this, we had a lot of pieces that we put together, training. We started with some pretty basic things, with kind of a paper handout and just walking patients through that. But what we found was the training had to be more in depth. we had to get into a deeper mindset with this. So we started to develop training videos and really good training literature for patients. And with that, again, the opportunity started to appear. As the consultations became much more involved and as these patients started to rely much more on our knowledge and our care, well, then what started happening was the physicians started to rely much more on our knowledge and care. And physicians started just to refer the patients to us so that we could train them, we could manage what was happening. Again, at this point, we started saying, boy, we really got to expand our knowledge base. We have to get deeper into this. That led us to being a little bit more assertive with the physicians, making more recommendations. And by doing that, the relationship blossomed to the point where the doctors would literally just call us and say, take care of the patient, tell me what I need to do, and we'll follow your suggestions. Again, once you put the pieces together, we've got the patient's trust and their understanding, we've got that relationship. We've developed the relationship with the physicians to where not only do they trust us with what we're doing, but they're literally referring their patients to us so that we can really make all the suggestions based on what their therapies and what the outcomes have been. Then we took it to that next step. And we developed based on literature, based on going through what the tried and true treatment methods have been, looking at all of the different support networks that had been really demonstrated to facilitate recovery after prostate cancer. And based on that, we came up with the protocol, the Stanley Penile Rehabilitation Protocol. And again, that was my way of filling a void.
Thanks. This presentation is really helpful. A lot of great information. I do have some questions for you, though. And I was wondering if we could take a break and go through some of them.
Of course.
I'd love to know, what was your evolution into consultative men's health programs?
So when I first started with this, I came on board with Stanley Specialty Pharmacy, and I don't know if it was just because I'm older and guys have a way of relating to me better, but I started to handle more and more of the patients that were coming in for men's health, sexual dysfunction, hormone imbalance, and ED. And with that, my knowledge base developed. And I was able to become better and become more of an expert in what I was doing so that I could help patients. And I guess as that developed, our business developed, and we started seeing a growth in our urology percentage in terms of how much business was generated. So that increased our focus on those patients, that increased the resources that we were putting into that. So it was kind of an organic evolution, I guess, as the training became better, as the consultations became more intimate, more effective, the revenue followed. And again, it really wasn't too difficult to see, boy, this is something that it was worth putting the time into. So I'd say that's really where it all kind of evolved from.
Excellent. What discoveries did you make by engaging in more in-depth one-on-one consultations?
Yeah, well, so what I found was there's a tremendous amount of questions. Men come in and number one, they're embarrassed. They don't want to talk about this. They don't want to go to the retail pharmacy. They don't want to go to their general care doctor and have this conversation. They want to talk with someone that they can relate to, that will empathize with what's going on with them. So what we find from this is these patients need more attention. They need more training. They don't get enough of a response in general in terms of like, you know, how often can you call your doctor and get an immediate answer? And a lot of these guys were looking for immediate answers. So our accessibility to them made us a perfect choice in terms of filling that gap to provide the knowledge for them. They came in, and again, I guess as we got further into this, we started to see a lot more of the emotional content and psychological content. And we started to get into a role where, you know, yes, we were the pharmacist and we're explaining the medications and the therapies, but at the same time, there was a big component of this that was there. You know, I'm not going to say that I was a psychologist by any means, but there was a lot of psychology going on because a lot of these guys were suffering and had been suffering, and their self-esteem was damaged. So we learned from the patients what the key components to the recovery path were and what had to be addressed.
I'm kind of thinking about what you said about the psychology. I mean, it must have been, do you feel like when you first started doing the consulting with the patients that you work, you know, they were just kind of an emotion, you know, was it an emotional thing for them that you guys had to go through and then you were able to drill down to get to more of the procedures?
Absolutely. Because I literally had patients who would be referred to me after they had gone through some trials with their physicians and were unsuccessful. And when you have a man come before you and the first thing out of his mouth is, if you can't help me, tell me right now. If there's no help, if there's no hope, I want to know. It is a gut check because at that moment you're realizing that, okay, I'm not just dispensing medication to this person. They need a lifeline. They need to have this hope. And, you know, is there a perfect solution that's going to work every time for every patient? Absolutely not. Is there a path, a path of building different therapies using a building block mentality, using the least intrusive methods first, really addressing the underlying issues that's going on with the patient, whether it be from other medical conditions, other medicines that are contributing to the problem, really getting to know the individual and then making adjustments to their therapy. So yes, first off, you have to really get into the patient and understand what they've been through. You have to have that empathetic side to address this properly. And I think that that's a key component to any counseling, but this is a very sensitive subject that we deal with, so it's even more so. And then once you get that kind of out in the middle of the room and out on the table and you're having a heartfelt conversation, it's amazing how much information we get from our patients. I can't tell you how many times I have a physician's office call me, say, yeah, we don't know what's happening. He called up and he said that things just aren't working. And once I actually begin the consultation with the patient, just because whether it's a time factor or they're more comfortable discussing it with me, getting so much more detail and then going back to that doctor and saying, yeah, your patient, we had 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 different issues that were occurring. This is what they had tried in the past. This was successful. This was not successful. This is what their goal in therapy is. Based on everything that's happening, here is the suggested therapy. And, I think sometimes the doctor's offices think we have some kind of a crystal ball because we're getting more information than they ever do. But in reality, it's just because getting to know these patients and really establishing the relationships allows us to get that much better information from them.
Right. Well, it sounds like, kind of bringing, something that's talked a lot about in healthcare, but not always achieved, which is basically bringing the humanity or humanism back into the process. And building on that relationship kind of thought, how do you develop rapport with prescribers? I know you talked a little bit about doing lunches and things like that, but I'd love to know more about how you got in with the doctors, how you built that rapport, and also how did you maintain it during the pandemic? And were you able to connect with new doctors' offices during the pandemic, and how were you able to do that if you were?
So a big portion of developing that relationship with the physician, it has to do with giving them something that they don't have, giving them something that they need.
Mm-hmm.
When I walk in and make my initial ventures into their offices, I come in with detailed information on how I can benefit their patients, on how I can benefit their practice, how I can improve their patient outcomes through the therapies that we employ. Because we spend more time, because we train the patients, because we have tools that are available to both the physician and the patient. And as we kind of go through this conversation, generally what happens is there will be questions from their side. Well, so how do you deal with this? Or what do you do if you have a patient that has this problem? If you are able to solve a problem for the physician, now you've kind of changed that picture a little bit, because now you're seen as a resource. And as that happens over and over again, now you're the go-to. Uh, you know, I use the phrase "become the expert" a lot, and maybe that's a strange thing to think, that I am going into a practice where you have medical doctors who have specialized in urology for years. Well, that doesn't mean that they specialize in the medication therapies or the combinations or the dose titrations, how to really walk the patient through that to benefit them the most. So you offer them something that really solves a problem. In terms of the pandemic, I have been very fortunate. And a big part of that is because a lot of these docs I've worked with for years, and we have a relationship where, I hate to even say this, but a lot of my doctors will send me a text message and say, hey, call this guy. Here's what's going on, give him a quick buzz. And that happens on a daily basis. I've also done a lot of Zoom meetings where I can have basically a virtual lunch, and doctors who I've not worked with before have the opportunity. I typically will send them all my material so it's in their office, and then we'll go through it just over the computer. I much prefer in person because I think that we get a lot better communication, and the questions just flow easier, but we've made it work. And as far as new doctors, absolutely. This has been a remarkable year in a lot of ways. And I think that had it not been for bringing out the protocol when we did, we really rolled it out just at the start of winter last year. My interactions with a lot of the patients, a lot from the support groups. One of the really great things that has come out of this is I have patients from all over the country now who I have worked with them online, and then they start coming to me directly, say, hey, listen, can you possibly address my doctor and see about getting these therapies changed? So now I'm meeting doctors in states where to be honest, I'm not even permitted. But I have relationships with other pharmacies where I can work with these patients. I can do the consultative side. I can do the recommendations with their physicians. And then I have a fulfillment pharmacy that can actually fill the prescription. I'm getting all the benefits in terms of, and again, you get paid for consultations, guys. That's a huge part of this. But I'm developing relationships with doctors in states where I've never worked, I've never practiced. Even in my own area, what has happened is as your, I don't want to say your notoriety, but as your reputation grows and as word of mouth, as patients start talking, well, then you start getting phone calls from doctors that maybe have used other offices, other pharmacies in the past, and they say, I just keep hearing that you guys do something different. So we've been able to extend relationships, to build relationships, to foster new relationships, even during a pandemic when we really don't have the ability to do near the marketing we normally would.
I did have a thought when you were talking about the user groups, which was, how do you get entrance into them? Are they not protected and private and kind of suspicious of a business coming in order to just drop marketing material?
Right, so I don't drop marketing material. When I'm going into these online forums, yes, like everything else, you have to petition. And when I do so, I explain up front. I said, my name is Greg McKettrick. I am a clinical compounding pharmacist. I specialize in men's health and sexual wellness. A huge portion of my patient population are prostate cancer patients. I work with them step by step, helping them to kind of get through the after effects of their treatment. I am here to do nothing but offer advice, hopefully give some solutions. I've not been rejected, and I ask permission before I share anything that has to do with my business. I will have patients that say, what's your website? I want your protocol. I want to take this to my doctor. What can you tell me? And I will go to the administrators of these groups and say, I'm being asked to share this. Is it okay if I put this out? And as long as I'm not there just soliciting for hey, send me money type of a thing, I have not had a single rejection. I actually have had so much encouragement from not just the admins, but the men who are the members that really make up these groups. And I've so here's a really neat thing about this. When I'm on this, and maybe I'm answering a particular patient's question, and then I see someone completely different who I have never talked to, and you see a question pop up. Boy, I wish there was a really good training video on how to do penile injections. Boom, here's somebody from Des Moines, Iowa, puts up, oh, go to Stanley Specialty Pharmacy. They've got incredible instructional videos. And that takes my breath away when I see it, because I didn't do it. Somebody else recognized what I've done. They've recognized, hey, these people have really gone up and beyond what was needed and what was maybe expected to put a product out that is really helpful. And when you see that, that's the encouragement. I mean, yeah, you're looking for the financial rewards and all the rest, but boy, from just being a medical professional and wanting to help people, when you see that the things that you have done have really benefited and it's recognized by patients and they are, appreciative of the work you do, man, that's the greatest feeling.
Great. Thank you very much. That was a great answer, very helpful. How did you educate yourself in the treatment of these men's health issues?
Through a lot of seminars. There are some wonderful seminars, webinars, things like A4M, where you can go and really learn from experts in these fields. And then you read and you research. When I was kind of kicking around this idea of the protocol, there were some practitioners who I worked very closely with for a very long time, knew them very well. And I was in actually doing a lunch in one of these offices, and I sat down, and after pretty much everybody had cleared, I was there with one of the urologists. And I kind of had these handwritten notes. I said, you know, this is something that's been bothering me. I said, I know we need this type of treatment, and I have this idea of putting this treatment path together. And we sat there and talked about it, and the answer I got was, if you're going to do it, you need to make this bulletproof. You need to make this something where when you show it to the doctor, they're not going to look at it and find fault or find a way to kind of shoot down any pieces of the therapy. So what did that mean? I went back from that point and I started to really research. I went to the experts and looked to see what therapies were used. And I mean, I'm not the only one who's ever come up with the idea of penile rehabilitation. I incorporated pieces of all these different pathways that had been put together. I did not see one that went from A to Z quite as completely as what I've done. I've incorporated everything from the initial exercises all the way through. I have a physical therapist that I work with who specializes in incontinence and pelvic floor. I have a representative from one of the largest medical device companies who they specialize in things like the penile implants and the male sling and the artificial sphincters, who I can refer my patients to, and they will get a phone call the next day explaining these things. I have this network of professionals that I'm very fortunate to be surrounded by and to be involved with, who all have the same mentality. And because of that, it all works. It all just fits together. I don't know if that answers 100% of your question.
Yeah, no, it was great. What surprising discoveries or encounters did you make while going down this consultative path?
The overwhelming similarity of problems. Again, as I said, the most significant thing I found was that time after time, I was presented different patients, different day, different month, different year, same story. And they didn't know where to turn. And there was not a resource that they could use. So you'd hear about Googling and YouTube and all these different things and relying on secondhand information. It baffled me that this had not been addressed. This is a huge population of patients. And it's not going away. So the ability to, I guess, find these similar stories, the similar problems, and address that, and really come up with a cohesive plan of treatment. That was the big thing. That was the bang. So I think that was probably the biggest discovery that I had, just the singularity of these patients' experiences.
What have been some of the outcomes from developing this type of consultative approach to your patient care?
So, number one thing, we're getting great response. Patients, it's amazing. And the funny thing about it, I honestly think that each one of these patients thinks that they're the only one I talk to. because I get so many phone calls and so many voicemails and so many emails, and they said, "Hey, Greg, this is Bob, and I had a question for you." Like, okay, Bob, I need a little more detail. But the great thing is we've seen this development. The patients are responding, they're getting good results. We have we have case studies now that show the outcomes of what the therapy has achieved. What has that led to? That's led to more recognition from the urology practices. So we're getting more and more referrals. And I speak to other pharmacists about this all the time, and they're like, "What do you mean you get referrals?" Well, we do. We actually have within the protocol, the doctor signs off and we take over care of the patient. Now, they are still completely kept informed and we're sending recommendations back and forth, but they sign off. They give us consent to treat their patients. They're sending them to us for care. From that, so, we have the improved patient care. We have improved relationships with the physicians. We've increased our business and our footprint in this market. We have also had the opportunity now to start really training other pharmacies. We have pharmacies that, they said, "We like what you're doing. We want to do the same thing. How do we do this?" Well, you've got options. You can spend 4 years, 5 years piecing together this program, or you can license these videos. They've actually started licensing the videos, licensing our training material. We're wholesaling products to them, like the vacuum pumps and supplements, simply because we're buying in such volume that we can sell it to these other pharmacies cheaper than they can go out and find it. So not only are we seeing these benefits from a patient level and from the physician level, but we are now in a position where we're expanding the platform of the protocol, where it can now be mobilized and used by other pharmacies in other areas of the country so that patient care is going to improve. And that's really what the goal of the whole thing was. I refer back to the letter from Joe from California. And after I read his letter, I spoke with him and I sent him my protocol. And he said, "My gosh, this addresses every single point." And he said, "When are you coming to California?" I said, "Well, we're working on it." So, the great thing about it has been it's expanded our boundaries and kind of taken the vision to some new levels. And this is what my message is in terms of the marketing aspect of this. It started as a patient necessity. We found a void. We applied the resources to address the void, but in doing so, we have had such a great benefit in terms of being able to expand our business and really our presence within this market. Now we're going beyond that, and we're starting to really incorporate with partner pharmacies around the country. So don't limit what your real picture is in terms of what the outcome will be, because it can evolve beyond what you might expect.
Excellent. That pretty much addresses my next and last question, which is how have you capitalized on the consultative practice model? Unless there's anything else you want to add to that.
Yeah. Again, the how you capitalize on this is you monetize. So when we do this therapy, now, number one, we don't price these things exorbitantly, but we are spending a lot of time. These consultations, this is not your 5-minute, typical pharmacy counter patient consultation. This is something where you're investing time with this patient. So we're getting reimbursed for consultations. This has been one of the failures in pharmacy for as long. I've been a pharmacist for over 30 years. And majority of that time, there has been conversation about how pharmacists can get reimbursed for the consultative piece. This is it. You find your niche, you find your expert spot and expand in it.
So,
Go
so
ahead.
are the insurance agencies, the insurance companies, are they the ones who's compensating you for the consultations?
No, we are billing the patient, and then the patient has a claim form that they can submit.
Mhm.
I know different pharmacies operate in different ways. Ours, we're not contracted with the insurance,
Okay,
primarily because we're strictly compounding.
got it.
Uh, and then most of the insurances don't play very nice with compounds, so it's just is easier not to mess with that.
Mhm.
But you know, the nice thing about it, like I said, once we were able to really see the value in the consultative piece and then communicate that to these other pharmacies, the pharmacists that we work with in other parts of the country, this is something that has real growth potential. Why? Because no one's offering the service. So I guess I was very, very fortunate to find a spot, a piece in terms of patient care that not only I had a great interest in treating, but was able to develop the protocol that helped. And then now we're sharing this. So this is how I see, you know, these challenges to pharmacy when FDA is telling you you can't do this, the PBMs are telling you we're not going to pay you for this. The reimbursement rates are ridiculous. Your time has very little value to most of these components. What is your reimbursement per prescription at the end of the day? So if you can expand beyond, again, get out of the dispensing mentality, get out of the fulfillment mentality, and put on your business hat and get into the consultative portions of these things where you really can recoup on your investment. That's where you're going to make your difference.
Excellent. Thank you. So let's then go back to finishing up your presentation.
Sure.
I'll go to the next slide. Here.
So, you know, a lot of this we have discussed in terms of, you know, the questions, but what changed in our approach and how did we take, you know, our basic idea and convert it into something that was bigger and better? What really happened was identifying the need. And then once we did that, we started to incorporate these other components. I've mentioned before that I have a great team. I have players on my team that I couldn't have imagined doing this without. We started, and again, because of our relationships with the physicians, we started doing more patient outreach, more seminars. And one of those mediums that we used was through the company Boston Scientific. Again, they're a manufacturer of the penile implants and slings and the artificial sphincters, a lot of men's health products. They started to work with us because they recognized that we were doing things with patient care that were exceptional. In return, we are referring patients to them. As I mentioned, they are on board because the linear progression for most of these patients at some point, for a pretty good percentage of our patients, there's going to be a point where the therapies just don't work. Does that mean there's no more answers? Of course not. We have the ability to refer them to companies like this where they can have a surgical intervention. The practice models that we've used with them, again, it's reproducible. Because of that, the pharmacy licensing, our materials, our marketing materials, our training in our protocol, it's that much more marketable for us. Another great relationship that we've used, and I was at a seminar and I met some folks from a company called Berkeley Life, and they have a great nitric oxide product. They've got wonderful marketing of it. They use a great test strip. We started incorporating that into our treatments, and it made sense. The nitric oxide is a huge component for sexual function. Big component in a lot of things, but for sexual function, a huge component. Because we were moving a lot of product, they started to take interest in us, and they started to help with more and more marketing. And where did that lead? Well, that led to doing podcasts around the country, with doing radio programs with pharmacies in California and in Texas, with them actually using us and doing stories on us that they now are sending out to other pharmacies around the country and urology clinics around the country. That basically it's advertising for us that, heck, I couldn't pay for it. There's no way I could get that kind of information material out to all these pharmacies. And again, what else has happened? Well, because I'm buying in such volume, I can now wholesale that product. Same kind of a thing. There's another note on there about the vacuum pumps. We work with a great company that supplies a very quality vacuum pump, works wonderfully for our patients. We buy in such volume that now we are wholesaling those to doctors' offices and other pharmacies. And I think probably one of the, I don't know, I guess the cherry on top of all of this, programs like this, being able to address pharmacists around the country, that's very satisfying. We also were recognized. The International Journal of Pharmaceutical Compounding picked up on the protocol. It started out where they wanted to do an article based on the protocol. This has evolved as of last night. We are now planning the 6th article that's being published based on the protocol, the work we've done, the marketing of this. Again, this is something that's taking us beyond any boundaries that we imagined prior. And the next step, it's going into urology journals. Who knows from beyond that where else we can take it? But the premise behind it was we want to get the word out. We've got the word out. And this is continuing in just the grandest scheme I could imagine. So as you see here, what started with the identifying of a need, we saw the void. We saw where these patients were kind of left out on an island by themselves. Really kind of came into this concept with the penile rehabilitation. I don't want to say that this is going to be a rule for every pharmacy, but I am going to tell you that over the course of the last couple of years, our urology business has gone from about 20% to over 50%. And that number is growing every single day. We have seen these challenges to other segments of the compounding field of the other markets that we can work in. And those challenges are going to continue. They're not going away. This particular avenue is sustainable. This is something that we have found a niche for ourselves that we can grow in. It has driven our business. It has increased our footprint. So beyond that, it's increased our capacity within our own business, we've stemmed off a second business based on this, which we have Stanley Specialty Pharmacy, but the consultative side has grown so much, we now have a second entity, which is the Stanley Pharma Group. And this is really to manage this influx from dealing with other pharmacies around the country, from dealing with this consultative side. It just couldn't be contained within one business. So has this been a big deal for us? It's been huge. It's you know, it says right on the side, it's a game changer, and this has been enormous for us, and I just foresee it becoming more so. So again, my hope is that whatever your market is, or if you are in this kind of a market, if you want to grow your urology business, reach out, because you know, this is something that we can help you with. But find that area where you can really make a difference, put your plan together and attack it, and you might be amazed what comes out of it.
Do we want to just kind of review these quickly and say what the answers are?
You're gonna give away the answers? Jeez.
I don't know. What do people normally do? Sure, they got to the end. They should already know.
So, all right, marketing meetings are most successful when your meeting agenda is to promote a new product. I'll tell you, that's generally not going to work all that great, because if you're just walking in there to sell something, chances are you're going to fall on deaf ears. Your objective is to find solutions to your client's needs. That sounds like that's probably going to be the answer that I would pick. Your goal is to modify your client's practice. Now, that might be a side effect, but if you go in with the understanding you're there to find a solution that they're really looking for, you're going to have the most successful marketing campaign ever. So B. Second question, best approach to gaining your client's trust. A, tell them how busy you are and how successful your business is, because that's what's really going to develop their trust. No. Provide discounts, coupons. Yeah, probably not. Really develop and provide consistent and accurate and reliable services for their patients and for their office. Obviously, that's going to be the answer. So C. How can you position yourself as an expert in your market? Tell everybody you're the best. Probably won't work. Maybe, probably not. Provide education and services that fill a need and exceed expectations. God, that sounds like a good answer. Follow the usual and customary standard of care. I don't think so. So B is the way to go. Make yourself better and exceed expectations.